Today is Friday, January 9th. This is Beyond Bitcoin Hangout with Bytemaster from BitShares project. He's going to normally start off with a project update. Then we go into community questions. And if we have time, we ask any questions that are asked on the forums or the subreddit. With that said, would you like to get us started with an update, Bytemaster?
Sure. It's been another busy week for the BitShares team. We all got back from our Christmas New Year's break and got the new year kicked off. Some of the big things that happened this week was the relaunch of BitShares. And this is honoring 100% BitShares as of the November 5th snapshot. There's a blog post I wrote about the subject, apologizing for all the confusion. I hope that this makes everyone happy. It seemed to get lots of positive feedback, and we're going to move forward from there. I don't want to talk too much about BitShares, because we covered that a lot last time. We are working on a release roadmap that's going to have about a new upgrade to BitShares about once a week with new features. And then after a week of successful testing on BitShares, we are going to merge them into BitShares proper. So look out for a blog post outlining our release schedule for the features and help us test them on BitShares.
So the big changes that happened really were just the allotment of who was going to get it, who's going to get a stake in it.
There's that, and we provided a GUI for it. The first one never had a GUI. So those are the two big changes of BitShares. Other than BitShares, my main focus for the past couple of weeks has been on marketing and getting the word out, producing a huge amount of content. That content is going to start being sent out through our social media. I started a referral program. The rewards are undefined, but we can track it and we can reward people that are doing a good job once we figure out the metric and we are sure that it can't be gamed. But there is a post on the BitShares forum that shows you how you can add a extra argument at the end of any URL for BitShares.org, BitShares.tv, or my blog. And if you refer someone to one of those pages and they end up registering an account through our faucet, then we will know it. So we're working on further metrics to track the progress. I believe last time I mentioned that our first goal was to establish a baseline, understand where we are, and then move forward with systematic improvements to improve on those stats. And that's what we're doing. So my focus is on marketing, getting the word out, funneling users into BitShares and explaining stuff. I've been working with Adam from Follow My Vote, as well as Max Wright, to really make this stuff happen. And I would say that it has been a raging success. We have been on the front page of Reddit or Hacker News multiple times per week since I started. And that's creating thousands or tens of thousands of new users coming and learning about BitShares and discussing things. So I'd like you guys' opinion on what you think of the blog and the direction we're going.
Does anybody have any opinions before I open my mouth?
I think the blog looks fantastic. There's some little glitches here and there, and some things that are not perfect, but hey, we're all human, and I'd say it's a fantastic effort. And I can't believe how much content you're putting out there, dude. That is something else.
Yeah, there's definitely, it's almost daily, and it's not just 400 words here or there. It's like long posts that are really in depth. So I think that's one of the most powerful things that Bytemaster does is teach. Personally, that's one of the reasons why I like to see him out there talking to people and explaining things, because I think that's one of the strengths that people don't recognize a lot, you know.
The one comment I had about not so much the blog, because the blog is fantastic, and the referral program is very smooth, but it was about the postings to Reddit, and it was more a comment about the community. One thing I've noticed is that, almost as soon as usually Toast or someone posts up one of Dan's articles to Reddit, there's a sort of a flood of support from the community, which is great. But reading it, some of it is just obvious, pumping. And I'm wondering what we can do to address that and to have the community participate in the Reddit threads in a more constructive and less sort of, frankly, shill manner.
I would suggest community members, if you're going to be a frequent Reddit supporter, just vote. If someone asks a question, provide useful answers, but don't express any opinion. I think that would be the best way to remain neutral while supporting it. We don't want to create fake conversations or have a bunch of artificial pumping. As much as I'd love to see your positive comments, let's keep those in our forum, and we will let other people take the lead of providing feedback, and then we will respond with questions.
If you don't mind that I interrupt here, it seems to me when I've looked at these posts, in general, one person, Toast, has been doing something that I really like. He'll point people to other blog posts to answer their questions, as opposed to necessarily always answering them himself, which kind of, it does two things, right? It directs them to even more information that you have in the blog itself. But not only that, it also provides more of a neutral perspective. That way it's not, me going on there and looking like a troll because every time somebody says something negative, even if it's incorrect, it doesn't look like I'm going on there, or Toast is going on there and saying something directly in response to every single comment like that. He'll normally post something like a blog post that you have, like a link to it, and allows them to kind of go out and research it for themselves. You'll find the people who don't, there will be people who won't go there because all they're doing is trolling, but the people who aren't there just trolling and actually want real information are going to have a reason to learn.
That is very much the reason why I'm creating the blog. I want to have canned answers for just about every particular point or counterpoint or argument anyone makes out there, so that our community members can just point people to the blog and they can get the best possible, well-written, thoroughly argued point on that subject, as well as links to everything else that can help them learn more. I find that if you try to rewrite the argument over and over everywhere you go, you might not get it perfectly right, and it's going to take you a lot longer. So sharing those articles is the real goal. It helps drive traffic and keep the whole thing going. I think that's a very good strategy, and that's what I'm trying to do with the blog, is provide this raw content for people to do that.
Well, I'm liking it, and you've already given us a lot of, I would call it ammo, but that has an offensive kind of connotation to it. So I guess it would be more material that we can help people connect with your philosophy behind things and some of the reasons why you engineered the system the way it is. So it's I'm liking how it's going. I mean, I understand what Riverhead's saying. I think that we're all going to make mistakes at times. I think it's also helpful for the community to kind of reach out to other people who are, if something comes across the wrong way, maybe reach out to that person and say, hey, that might come across the wrong way. Could you maybe edit it? That might be another avenue to look at, because we're kind of, as a community, we're growing and evolving ourselves, right?
One thing I would like to say about our community is Adam's team did some research on our social media and our stats. And other than Dogecoin and Bitcoin, we seem to have the largest social media presence. Our community is growing and it's strong, and we're going to work on systematically increasing those numbers, increasing the participation on our social media sites, the number of people signing up to our forums. So we're doing really good getting a community. There's a lot more of us than we realize, and I was really encouraged by those numbers. So just thought I would share some of that. I believe that they are preparing a guest post for my blog to summarize the status of our social media and set the goals for the next month. And then we're going to start pushing to get more and more people to engage in social media. The blog content is going to be a big part of it, getting people to propagate that information out. The other thing we're looking at doing is drawing in other audiences. Some of my highest viewed articles had nothing to do with Bitcoin. They were just general articles on economics. And why am I an Austrian economist? And stuff about the CPI, or BitShares login was the number one post on my blog in terms of traffic generated. So I think we can get a lot of people outside the cryptocurrency space and get a lot more views, a lot more attention to what's going on if we don't view the Bitcoin Reddit as the target anymore. We've been to the top of that enough with really good articles, particularly the ones about the decentralized Bitcoin exchange, the Bitstamp news, the timing of our video. I mean, it was just a great week. We hit that perfectly. I think the Bitcoin community has heard about us, at least those on Reddit. We need to start branching out and getting wider audiences. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out.
One thing I noticed this morning, as sort of a result of the massive onslaught of content on the blog, is we need to sort of crowdsource the editing of the documents. And I exchanged a couple of messages with Cass this morning, and there is a link on the forum that I'll post up later to an issues GitHub where you can post up findings like spelling mistakes and that sort of thing. So they're all centralized. He can see them and work through them rather than just random forum posts.
I do appreciate the editing. I've been looking to find a editor for my blog articles. I write these things as quickly as I can. You can imagine that cranking out 1,000 to 2,000 word blog posts at least once a day is quite challenging, particularly keeping the content relevant and meaningful. But having the community support has been greatly appreciated. Pull requests are very helpful. It would be great if there was one or two people that could create pull requests for things that other people find. So if someone says, "Oh, you misspelled something, or you left out a word, or used the wrong word someplace," that can get incorporated into a pull request, and I can just merge it in. That would really help me out. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing to help both spread the word and edit. I really think the referral program is going to help increase our organic search results, increase the incentive to share on social media. It's going to be really amazing. I'd like to switch gears now and talk about what we are planning for the BitShares.org website. I am super pumped about the direction we are going with that. The biggest challenge we have faced with BitShares.org is trying to communicate a complex idea simply, and to have a depth of information available. So what I realized is that the exchange, pitching BitShares as the best cryptocurrency exchange, or best exchange period, is a much easier explanation than anything we've done. It's something that people already know they want and need. Oh, a decentralized, trust-free exchange that can trade gold, silver, dollars, yen, and other currencies without any withdrawal limits or, any risk of being doxxed or bit stamped or whatever. That is something that the cryptocurrency community can immediately relate to. People have been talking about decentralized exchanges forever. All we need to do is convey to them that it is a decentralized exchange, that it is an exchange. So the new site is going to look very much like an exchange itself. It's going to have a login page, a sign-up page for creating your account. It's going to have price tickers on it and charts so that you can see the status of the internal markets. And then it's going to have the API, a merchants page, and all the things that people are used to seeing when they go to any of the existing exchanges. So, hey, it looks like an exchange. This must be an exchange. What's different about it? It is fully decentralized. Once we have that concept, then we can actually tailor the message. Once the user logs in, we can start presenting them, all right, you've logged into the exchange, now deposit your money. How are you going to deposit your money? We can direct them through the process of getting money into and out of the decentralized exchange, and encourage them to try our login system. So a lot of exchanges have a how it works section. If you look at Bitfinex or BitReserve or Ripple, they have a how it works section. We're going to have one of those to explain how our exchange works. It doesn't necessarily cover everything that BitShares is. It doesn't cover the full vision, but it covers enough to make it easy for people to convert. They come to the site, oh, this is an exchange. Yeah, I want to create an account. Create account. Oh, download a client. And they go through the process and they get registered for free. And it's all very natural. Then they can just go to the web browser to check their account status and discover things. So Cass has been working on some amazing updates for the website, BitShares.org. I think it's going to finally be the website we've been wanting for the past year. And I'm working with Cass each day to make sure it realizes that vision. It was my original vision for the site, by the way, was to make it look like an exchange. But I've sort of taken more direct control over that now, and we're making it happen.
Is this going to have anything, is the site going to have anything for delegate-centric type of information? Like, for instance, in my mind, I see something like we currently run off of price feeds, right, from different exchanges to make sure that we have an accurate, somewhat decentralized place where we can gather the information for the price feeds. Now, to me, it seems like there might be an opportunity to get some of these feed sources to actually advertise their site as one of the feeds to be used, provide all the information on, how you add it and all that good stuff. Have you guys considered something like that? Or is that outside of the scope?
Well, we have a problem of having a lot of information, and we don't want to confuse users. When they land at bitshares.org, we want it to focus entirely on, hey, sign up and use an exchange. We don't want to confuse them with delegates and how it works behind the scenes. We will have other pages that do those type of things. I think BitShares Blocks is a great place to put some of that type of activity. We're going to grow it out. I think we're going to remove the BitShares blog altogether and just use my blog as the main blog. We're going to have BitShares TV and the forum mentioned in the community and support section. But we really want to convey to people, hey, this is a decentralized exchange. This is how you use it. Start trading today. It might even have a local Bitcoin style process that I'm thinking of. The exchange won't hold any money, but it will help people advertise that they're looking to buy or sell BitUSD via escrow. So we'll see what things we can do there, but I really want to convey that it's an exchange and walk people through how they do the things that they expect to do on an exchange, which is deposit and withdraw money.
Are you concerned about the Know Your Customer regulations with regard to the local Bitcoins adjunct that you're considering?
It's no more than a Craigslist. I'm not doing anything with customers. The customers are just talking to each other.
Gotcha. Thank you.
When do you think the site will be ready?
That depends on CAS, and it depends on, I guess, how many different features you want. We already have the basic screen layout, and everyone in the marketing side really likes the way the site looks. I'm still filling out some content. I started a bounty for job openings, like job opening descriptions that are really compelling and sexy and make people want to say, yeah, I want to apply. With the key being that it should not mention that you're applying for a blockchain position. That's going to be after we get them say, yeah, I want to apply, because that's part of making it appear like an actual exchange. Oh, yes, exchange is hiring. That's something exchanges do. And then we just tell them on the second page. So we really want to give people an idea of the type of skills that are available and basically encompass everyone. So everyone has an excuse to say, hey, maybe I can come work for it and make some money. And then we can take them to a page where we explain how to get hired by the blockchain. I have a blog post I'm planning on writing that will do that here in a little bit.
Have you considered the possibility for delegates to have their own blog posts, maybe connected to yours in a network of blogs or something to that effect?
Anyone who would like to do a guest post, feel free to send a pull request with your post. I welcome any quality guest posts.
There's been talk on the forum about the difficulty of getting voted in and the speed at which people can get voted in. For example, when someone, a good candidate, wants to be hired and they have a good delegate proposition, it can take the ability to quickly get someone in and the number of slots available. So there's been talk about separation of employee and block producer. What are your thoughts on that?
I've addressed this many, many times. We cannot separate employee and block producer because we only have so many actual votes that the client can cast. You can't vote for 100 employees and 100 block producers. That would require 200 voting slots in the slate. And it also increases the number of people that need to be tracked. If you want to be able to hire someone quickly, you can have delegates that are just purely helper delegates that get pre-elected because they can be trusted to burn the money until there is someone they deem worthwhile. I don't think the fact that it takes a while to get hired is a bad thing. It gives the community a chance to review the proposal. Not everyone who comes along is necessarily worthy. And there's going to be a lot of requests. Yes, I'll do X, Y, and Z. And everyone will say, yeah, put them in. That's way too rash of a hiring decision. I think that people need to be producing prior to getting in. They need to be producing while they're campaigning. It should not be a case of, after I'm elected, then I'll start producing. That's the wrong attitude to have. We need to try before we buy. So having it slow is actually good.
I agree with all of that, and I agree with your latter suggestion of the helper delegates, and I think that's more towards what my question was leading to. Was right now, for example, I run a delegate that pays your salary, and I help with a few other delegates, for non-technical people. I was wondering what your thoughts on saying, if some of the IT people, maybe like 8 or 9 of us got together, fielded like 10, 100% delegates, and then that money could then be sent to like an account, a separate account, trusted for community decisions on who to pay for what, rather than each individual delegate slot is a position with a task.
If you can convince people to elect positions and trust you with the money, with the promise of spending it on people when you see the opportunity, or spending it at the direction of the core developers, I think it would be good to capture as much of the authorized dilution as possible and save it up so that we can actually do things. Each and every day that goes by that we don't dilute to the maximum extent possible, we are hindering our ability to grow. Dilution is not necessarily a bad thing if it's not being sold on the market immediately. If it's sitting in a fund, it's just basically authorized spending. It has no effect on the share price. Actually, it will increase our market cap because the outstanding shares will increase, but there's no sell pressure. Say that avoid creating trusted pools of money. We don't need to create 10 delegates that accumulate $20,000 a month worth of BitShares that don't have any place to go. That creates a huge trust issue, and then there are fights over how to spend the money. So just be careful with it. I think it's a good discussion to have. I think it might be a way to sponsor people's positions by prepaying their delegate registration fee. Who knows what things can be done there. One thing we can do with the funds is potentially fund some referral stuff once we get the funnels all properly tuned.
Okay, I think that sounds good. The pool of trusted money, is it that you don't like the idea of it being pooled at the delegate level, or like, let's say for example like a legal fund, it's that needs sort of quick action, and so we would have someone, a trusted buzz who doesn't run a delegate but is a trusted member of the community, and so as the delegates earn money, a script that automatically daily, hourly, whatever, transfer the earned money to him, and so it's an account he controls rather than the delegates. Is that okay pool, or is that still not advisable?
Isn't it a matter of the risk for regulation?
Well, there's so many different factors here. There's regulatory risk, but I don't think that really applies in our community, because I hope everyone's gotten it through their head that everything is contract free, that no one is required to do anything at any point in time, and anyone who has any money, it's their money free and clear, and they're not obligated to pay anyone. So if we give the money to Fuzz, he can walk away with it and that'd be okay, but of course we only gave it to him because, hey, we trust that he'll do the right thing with it. And so it's very much set up like a trust where we don't have control over it, but we trust the person who does. Creating large pools of money is a risk for hacking. We might trust Fuzz, but does he really? Is he going to remember his password? Is he going to back it up? And is he going to make sure his computer doesn't get compromised? The more trust we have in one person, it's problematic. It's bad enough the amount of trust that's placed in me right now. So I do like the idea of having some reserve funds held outside of Invictus by people that are trustworthy. But I want to avoid accumulating large amounts. Maybe if you set some budget and then you just automatically burn anything that's not being used after a certain point, to give us a little buffer, if you will, that will allow us to start paying someone immediately until they can get their delegate up. I kind of like that approach as a bootstrapping for someone.
In a future release, a lot has been talk about multi-sig. Would that address some of the trust issue if the money may go to Fuzz, but it's also multi-sig with maybe like 5 or 6 other or 10 other members of the community? Is the multi-sig coming? Is it going to be a 1.0 thing?
Multi-sig's done and works. Toast has been working on instructions on how to use it the past couple of days. So you'll definitely have that in 1.0.
Is this possible for? I've been considering once voting is actually up and running, like I'm talking the BitShares vote aspect, right? We could do pooling, we could do actual voting like we would in an election type of, we would have, stake voting, and then we would have the BitShares voting platform that we could use as well. Would that be able to be used as like a multi-sig where the majority can decide on things like this?
I think that a much better approach to this type of thing is for someone to create a user-issued asset that's sort of a IOU BTS and sell it on the market. And then someone can get elected as a delegate position and start buying back those IOUs. If we did that, then we could create as many IOUs as possible and basically fund our liquidity needs for like large cash infusions with a loan from trusted delegates or loan to trusted delegates that's using their future delegate pay to pay off the loan. But I agree with James who said it's not about trusting of these people. It's the fact that there should be detailed budget plans, project plans. Delegates should have a business plan prior to collecting the money. I had a post about that. I think I talked on Mumble about it. Have a plan to make money by doing your marketing. And have a plan to make money on your software development. You should come to the community with a business plan. Not just a give me money, let me spend it, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, no harm, right? We don't want people to get in the habit of just spending other people's money.
Speaking of user issued assets, is there anything in your plans, Bytemaster, about a blog post about the details of how that can be used and for marketing purposes and other uses today? Because it's in the GUI now, so it's a matter of how do you put it to use and make it an effective tool for marketing and other purposes.
Yeah, that's one of the topics in my backlog of blog articles to write.
Looking forward to it.
If I can comment on what Riverhead was suggesting, I would caution everyone heavily against this. We're essentially creating, centralized points here. I mean, what if something, God forbid, happens to Riverhead where he gets in a car accident, where we have one single person running and dispersing funds to multiple delegates. I mean, while pooling sounds like a great idea, ultimately we want these delegates to be spread across as many people as humanly possible.
I agree with you, and but currently we still have a number of init delegates, and the issue that I'm facing, and the reason why I do run a number of delegates for other people, is that the ratio of people wanting to do work, be it marketing, development, or whatever, is far greater than the number of people with the IT interest or skills to run a delegate. And so basically we have a disproportionate number of people willing to run a delegate versus people willing to work for the blockchain.
I agree, but do we want to compound that problem by adding even more on top of it?
I think what we want to do is increase the number of technical delegates and start doing a marketing campaign to get 101 fully unique, separate individuals, each running one node each. And that we should make a target and we should audit our entire delegate slate to say, well, we have 101 slots, but how many different people, right? How many delegates are you running overhead? A couple. We've got init that's running 5 or 6. And we've got other people that are doing payroll for various developers. I think we need to find and hire 101 real technical delegates. I also think that for the most part, the helper delegate buddy system is the way to go. You have one technical guy that receives the money and then pays it to the person who gets hired by the blockchain. The reason is it creates a check and a balance. The person who receives the money, the developer ends up making sure they get paid and making sure the delegate's working. And the helper can follow up with the worker to make sure, hey, are you actually working? Are you actually producing? If not, I'm going to raise a red flag and hold on to your money. The buddy system works very, very well for the delegate system. So I think we need to find 101 people that are running nodes, and when someone wants to get hired by the blockchain, they find one of the low-pay delegates, low-pay technical guys, and ask him to upgrade to a full-pay delegate position as a helper delegate. And every single technical delegate should be willing to represent a paid worker. And that can just be part of their job description of receive the money and then pay someone that you're supposed to pay or take a low pay rate. Possibly even campaign initially with 100% and then burn what you get paid on a daily basis until such time as there's someone who you think should be hired. I don't like the start out with 100% and then just pay, because now it's one person deciding to hire someone instead of having to vote in someone. So I still think we should push for 101 unique delegates with 101 servers running in 101 data centers.
Definitely the way to go, and I think it should be part of a proposal if you are a non-technical person and you want to run a marketing delegate or a dev delegate and not run a block producer. Part of your proposal should be, here's what I want to do, here's how I want to spend the money, and here is my plan to have it run. This is the person I partnered with, or so it's that becomes part of the plan, not something post nomination.
Right. You should know who's going to run your delegate ahead of time, and I think the technical delegates, every single slot up there should say, hey, I'm available to take on a paid position if you want me. And then they should campaign on being trustworthy enough to act as a kind of escrow agent between the worker and the blockchain. So it would be really helpful if someone could organize all the delegates and actually collect the information about how many unique servers how many unique people we have. And then we can start a campaign to get more. It might be the case that we need to pay delegates more than 3% in order to get the diversification that we want, in order to recruit the technical talent. I'm okay with that because the more technical people we have, the mere fact that we're advertising that will bring more people into BitShares, and it'll be good for us overall.
What do you think about? I've seen multiple times on the forums when, for instance, somebody like Riverhead who's doing the technical aspect, running delegates, and I'm not talking about just running a delegate. I'm talking about running it with the best practices in place to make sure that the servers are hardened from attacks. Logs are kept on somebody trying to enter the server without permission and getting locked out from blacking out IPs and things like that. And it's a lot of work for somebody. But one thing I've noticed is it seems like our community is kind of averse to paying these people a higher percentage. It seems like 5% right now is the going rate. So what do you guys have any recommendations or thoughts on what would be an appropriate amount? Because I can't see somebody with that high level of technical expertise just working for 5%.
I agree. If you think about how many man hours it takes to set up a delegate and a server and get all that stuff, you're looking at, to do it right, probably a full day's worth of work, which for a skilled individual could be as much as $500 just to get set up. And then you have the monthly maintenance cost of the server, which it should probably be like $200 or $300 a month just to cover the server costs and the maintenance upkeep, and basically cover their on-call time. So if you have a $500 startup cost and a $200 a month maintenance cost, you're looking at 10 to 15% pay for the base delegate if we actually want to make it worthwhile for someone to do it. Right now, I think it's barely covering actual expenses, and the delegates are more or less contributing their time for free. But obviously, we're not going to get as much decentralization with that approach. That said, having fewer than 100 delegates at this stage in the game isn't really harming the network. We're not really at risk of attacks. If we had 50 delegates, there's still plenty amount of decentralization. So perhaps we don't need to dilute so much just to cover those things when we should probably save our funds for development and marketing and things like that. But definitely I agree that we need a community plan and structure for the process of hiring someone and for a roadmap to complete decentralization. Probably geared toward, once we hit X market cap, this is what we are going to strive for. And we'll need to adjust our policies probably on market cap. If the market cap were to fall clear down to 10 million, then that would be very bad for our community, and we'd basically have to authorize higher dilution. But if it were to grow up to 100 million or 200 million, then we wouldn't need as much dilution in order to fund development. I don't think we're going to fall. I think we're probably pretty close to bottom, at least for this relative to Bitcoin. But it is probably very good to have a plan on paper that everyone can know in advance of what we will do as a community in every eventuality.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying here, Bytemaster. On the one hand, you were saying that we need to have, the 101 delegates and that very technically oriented, and yet on the other hand, you were saying that, well, we're not really providing much of a financial incentive for them to become delegates because they have to contribute their time by them, on their own. It's not something we're paying them to do. We're covering the expense of the servers, etc., but not their time. So there's not really any incentive for people with technical skills to contribute, outside of the people that just really want to see BitShares succeed. So to fill those 101 slots, I think you're going to have to change that equation. So are you saying that that and that's something that we need to work for, but it's not a priority now?
I think that it's going to naturally happen as the market cap grows. If the market cap were to double or triple, then the incentive for being a technical delegate would grow and you'd have greater competition. While the market cap's down low, we really can't afford more decentralization. And so we don't necessarily want to have high dilution for unnecessary decentralization. So I think that as we get more and more 100% paid delegates for doing actual work, that you'll naturally have an increase in technical delegates. The 100% paid delegates may need to offer a larger percentage of their pay to cover the helper initially, but I think we're probably fine in the short term. The situation will resolve itself, but it should definitely be tracked. We should know at any given point in time how many people and how many computers are behind the delegates.
And to the measure that they're scattered around the globe as well, how decentralized physically they are as well.
Right, and the jurisdiction. So I think SVK from BitShares Blocks should be the ideal person to take the lead on tracking that information. He's already a 100% paid delegate, so we should start to get that. And we should definitely flag any delegate who doesn't provide that information. So we know how many delegates are being uncooperative with our attempts at transparency.
I think as far as technical delegate pay, the standard rate seems to have normalized around 5% to run someone else's delegate, and I think that's fine because while the valuation is relatively low, like say I'm running 3 delegates, that gives me an aggregate of 15%. So it's not, we don't want to say, oh, now we need 101 unique delegates and now we only need 25 delegate slots. We can't change the number of slots, but we can change the number of virtual slots and look at them as, groupings. And so whether you have 25 people each running, 4 delegates, or you have 101 people each running 1, that'll be an elastic number depending on how competitive it is for the job slots.
I think you're exactly right. So we've got the tools we already have the tools we need in the system as is. We just need to organize our community. And I think the number one thing is to have a plan and a policy for what we consider good and what we consider bad. And then make sure we have transparency. Because it's one thing to say, yeah, it's okay to have 3, but what if you actually have another 5 or 6 that we don't know about? So we just need to make sure we collect the information and make it fully transparent that while you might have 3 slots for the people you're doing stuff for, they're all on the exact same machine. And therefore, we don't have 101 machines validating. We have now, 98. And that way we can be honest when people ask about how decentralized we are. Are there any questions? We have 7 minutes to go. I think we should probably try to consider Reddit or other questions.
I would like to ask one question that I was whispered in here. It was regarding Cass and whether he's received any bonus pay for all the work that he's done.
He has.
Okay.
I got another quick question. As far as events in the future this year, last year they went to the Vegas event and BitShares had bits showing. What events next year is the Bitcoin community going to plan to be at? Because I'd like to be part of that.
There's a Texas Bitcoin conference that Eddie from Pure Tracks has asked me to attend. I'm going to be attending it, but it's just going to be me. It's not going to be a big BitShares event. In my opinion, I've been to several conferences. Each one, they get worse, and the number of new people is smaller than the last one. It's becoming a little inbred, and everyone there knows about us already. So as far as spending money goes, it just does not give you a high return on investment for pumping the conferences. It'd be one thing if the conferences were doing a really good job of advertising and getting more regular people to attend, but it seems like it's mostly vendors talking to each other.
Okay, cool, thanks.
This question has to do with the market cap and also your recommendation for delegates to hold approximately 30% or a third of their delegate pay in the fiat that they would have to pay taxes in. Do you foresee that helping the market cap, or if holding partial bit assets as a delegate instead of just pure BTS? Do you see that as a beneficial thing for our market cap, especially with respect to as Bitcoin continues to seemingly continues to be in a bear market?
The reason we pay people is so they can afford to live. So I think you should expect that 75% of their money, their delegate pay will be sold to pay taxes and to live off of. And I know very few people that can save 25% of their pay, especially when currently the delegate pay is just $2,000 a month. You can sell it all and still not be able to afford rent and food and gas. So,
do you foresee this being a problem, or creating perhaps downward pressure on BitShares?
Yes, well, it does provide downward pressure. The goal is to produce more upward pressure to counteract it by the work that's being done. If we're not creating upward pressure, then of course it's going to go down.
So this kind of goes along with what Riverhead was talking about with the init delegates being exchanged out for people who are providing valuable services beyond just running a delegate.
Right. We want to minimize our right now at today's market cap. We need to be very efficient with what we spend our money on, because if we wanted to actually support all of the core devs, we're going to need to increase our market cap significantly, or they're going to have to take on multiple paid slots by the end of the year. And I'd like to avoid that happening. I think we can avoid it happening because the stuff we're working on is going to mature, right, dramatically in the next 6 months. It seems like it's been forever, but it's only 6 months ago that we launched BitShares. And that was after about 3 or 4 months of having a full team of people working on it. And most of the work before that was just me, So in terms of total work on BitShares, we're only 6 to 9 months into it. In the next 6 months, you can expect to see even more work done than was done in the last 6 months. And that work produced $35 million worth of value at today's prices. So I think we can easily magnify that, particularly because we actually have a marketing strategy that's starting to come together. We're starting to get our message clear and starting to generate traffic. And we've been missing that for the past year. So I think we'll be in good shape.
Well, I can say from my perspective, I've been approached by now more than a few delegates or delegate candidates who want to run delegate hangouts with the community. And I know that I'm planning on beginning to start running more of these as my time permits. But just as a kind of a gauge on what you're saying, I think that trend is beginning, especially with what you're saying, Bytemaster, especially since your blog has come out. I've had some people email me, and people it seems like are either new registrants to the forum or haven't been around on the forum for a while, have a low forum post count, but offer a lot of great skills that we can, I think, use to our advantage. So look out for those, I guess, is my point. Does anybody have any questions before we're sitting at around the 1 hour mark right now?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the delegate registration fee being so high as it is. I made a post about it on the forum. I just think that having a $1,000 fee could be a problem, because I mean, if you imagine some other company like Google or Apple, and they said that their employees had to pay $1,000 before, roughly $1,000 before having an interview, then those companies, I would think they would die quite quickly. And we're not even as big as, we can't handle that kind of problem. So I think it's a problem to have people required to pay all that. And so I've suggested on in the forum post, if you had a delegate voted in who was a recruitment delegate who was paid to vet the delegate proposals, the submission, the applicants, or you could have a few recruitment delegates who are paid to make some basic decisions just to get rid of spammers and very low quality applications, then they could put through, and then that could change the system a bit.
For iOS development, you have to pay $100 a year just to be a registered developer. And I imagine there's millions out there. And I think it's a nice barrier to entry because their stuff ends up being high quality.
The real thing is you can tell someone's serious if they know that they can get $1,000 back. They know that they can get elected. You don't want people that don't know that they can get elected to even apply. You don't want people applying for the position that aren't willing to invest $1,000 into the system first. So I think it's a very good filter. It's a neutral filter. So I want to keep it. I'm trying to remember, there was another reason why it was actually a very good thing. It was protecting us from an attack, and it's like slipping my mind right now. But there are lots of other subtle benefits to having that barrier.
It does raise the question about how prices are set. For example, the user-issued asset of 500 BTS, for example. How are these things determined? Are they just guess or initial stabs?
Yeah, they were just stabs. I was aiming for $10 at the time that we set the price, and so it's falling in some sense. And then I just did rough order of magnitude. So we do have a problem with these prices being somewhat arbitrary. I would like to replace those arbitrary prices with a price fee that delegates can publish for these things. That way, everyone can agree on what the current fee should be. No one delegate's in control, but as a community, we can adjust the prices. I don't like price fixing in general. It's too rigid. So, but for now, it's easy and it works. It keeps out the spam while allowing people to still experiment.
The question is what criteria do you use to set the price? I mean, you have a filter criteria for the case of the delegates, for example. I'm sure that's also true for user-issued assets and anything else. You don't want people just spamming and creating these things because it's so cheap to do. But on the other hand, how do you get the market how do you decide what metrics to use to decide what the market is willing to pay legitimately and reasonably?
My primary objective was to say, set the price high enough that you better have a legitimate business case for it, or it doesn't make sense. And that's how I was trying to differentiate user assets versus market assets. And I wanted the user asset to be high enough that, hey, the network actually does get some benefit for that, and the user should probably be able to get at least $10 worth of value out of the asset. In order to even bother everyone else. But of course, those are just arbitrary numbers. But as the network grows, we want to be careful. We want the prices to go up almost with the network. Because assets are transferable, it's actually good if people want to speculate and squat on the assets and squat on the good names. That helps cover the cost of operating right now by reducing the supply. So I'm kind of thinking that would be a good way of helping fund the overall DAC is to encourage people to squat on things above a certain price.
Well, does anybody else have any questions or comments or concerns that they'd like to voice?
Update on ETA. I know you don't like to get anything firm, but is there? I think I heard you say earlier in the podcast, Bytemaster, that you're looking at about a week to get DevShares up and going. Or no, DevShares is going now, but there was some mention of a week time frame, and I didn't quite get all of that, but I'm just really looking for an update on projected estimates of when we're going to see anything out in the marketplace that's new, a new update for the client, etc.
Yeah, the dev client doing a hard fork to enable divesting balances and many other small features. Once the dev hard fork happens and we've tested it and no one's had any problems, then we will update the BitShares client with those features. We have a lot of features that are already done that we are just being cautious in our rollout schedule. In theory, we could be rolling out escrow and multi-sig and a half dozen other things that we've just queued up so that we can test things in a more stable variety. So you shouldn't get worried that you don't see the feature. They're there, they're queued up.
Is it a matter of testing primarily?
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we had DevShares up so that we could follow a controlled release schedule. Release on DevShares, test on DevShares for at least a week. Make sure that no one has any problems. And then roll it out to the BitShares network. And to do it, not 20 features at once, but one or two critical features at a time. That way, we are less likely to break the BitShares network. So I would view the slowdown in the release schedule of BitShares more of us coming to a more mature process in releasing, so we can avoid disruptions to the network.
Yeah, that's a good idea to roll it out slowly and don't overload your ability to test it, so your testing is more thorough as well. Very good.
I have one final question. Have you guys considered I know that PTS itself, one of the members from the PTS community, who's also a member of the BTS community, provided a means by which people can claim their share dropped shares in other DACs without having to give up their private key. Now, I see the potential for synergies between, for instance, something like BitShares Play or BitShares Music to actually, in some ways, provide some help with maybe user interface issues and different tools like that that could be adopted by the BTS chain. Has the BTS development team been in any talks with the other DAC developers to see where they might be able to utilize each other's work?
We are very interested in pulling as much work from other places as we can. But I don't think we've actively talked with them about their solution. It's really kind of a low priority for us because we're not looking to import any other keys, and those other chains haven't even released it yet. As long as they support it, right? As long as Play supports it and PTS supports it, then future clones can support it. But there's no reason for us to support that in the main chain at this point in time.
Maybe I'm being misunderstood. I'm not talking like monetarily or anything like that. I'm just kind of curious if you've answered it, if you've been actively in discussion with any of the developers to make sure that maybe you're maximizing the development efforts on one chain that might be able to be used on another. That's all. With that said, are you finished, Bytemaster, or do you have anything else that you'd like to tell anybody about or guide them anywhere, that like give them the blog address or anything to that effect?
No, not at the moment. I probably should break and get to work on today's blog post.
Well, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Bytemaster, for attending. I urge everybody to either ask questions underneath the postings that I provide on the forums or on the subreddit. I prefer the subreddit, and people can then vote them up. That way we get kind of the community deciding which are the most important questions and valuable questions being asked by people who might not be able to make it physically to these hangouts. We try to maximize participation in that respect, but yeah, they are fantastic, Riverhead. And I'll say this also, we're wanting to run delegate hangouts and give people who are running delegates in marketing, in development, pretty much anywhere. If you are interested in running a delegate and you would like to set up a delegate hangout, please contact me. I'm Fuzzy on the forum.